Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Stacey Marmolejo. Stacey is the founder and CEO of Franchise Prep Academy, which helps soon-to-retire military personnel navigate the franchise industry so that they can evaluate if a franchise career is right for them in their next step after the military. So welcome to the show, Stacey. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you inviting me, Scott.
Absolutely. So before we get started, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background, just for anyone who may not be familiar with you and your background?
Sure. So I am from a family of 10 military generations, serving collectively 176 years. Our youngest family member is a freshman at the Naval Academy this year. Go Ben. So my parents were very disheartened when I did not join the military. But when I was in my 20s, I knew I'd either be in the brig or kicked out really quickly because I was quite a rebel back then. But I climbed the corporate ladder, and I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But because my parents were so aligned with the military and what they perceived as security, they were uncomfortable that I was even having a civilian job, let alone thinking about starting my own. So that just wasn't on the table, but I never forgot about it. And so I spent 30 years. And when I was senior vice president of a national company, I was just like, it's now or never. Like, I've always wanted to own my own business. I want to know if I can do it. So I quit and I bought a startup franchise, and I ended up having 3 locations over 16 years and sold it for 7 figures and decided I was going to retire. And I was retired for 2 days. So those of you who have done many years, if you've done your 20 and you're like, I'm going to retire and play golf, I want to know if that's what really happens, because I was so bored. I was like, oh, I can't do this. And I just started helping people looking at franchises. I don't represent any particular franchise, so it's not like I sell franchises, but I think it is a great business model, especially for people who have work experience, but not necessarily business ownership experience.
Right. And there's a
So
difference there. And we were talking before we started recording about owners and starting up a business, from scratch. I'm not talking franchise. I'm just talking, I have this great idea. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start selling this product or service or whatever it is. That startup process is incredibly difficult.
difficult. Yep.
Coming up with a name of your company that you can actually use, hasn't been used before, that's not currently in use someplace else, that you're going to get in trouble with. You're not going to go out and create your new fast food restaurant chain that you came up with this great idea, and you're not going to call it McDonald's. Like, you can't do that. You have to come up with a unique name, and there's legal stuff that's involved, and there's paperwork depending on what state you're in. There's different forms and all this filing stuff, fees that you have to do, coming up with a logo and a brand and all this stuff, marketing, all that stuff is a
And
lot
if
of
it's
work.
brick and mortar, then you have to go find your location. And
Right.
yeah,
Location is a huge deal.
that's a whole nother skill set, is
It is.
negotiating the commercial leases. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And getting into the right place that you're going to be able to afford and be able to make money at down the line. You're not going to just hit the ground running on day one when you're starting off a business like that, because there's just a lot involved. And if you don't have the right team in place that's going to help you out with a lot of this stuff, it's a lot of work for any one person to do by themselves.
It's a lot of work for one person, and I don't know any one person that has every skill set.
No, exactly.
So
And
something is going to be better than something else in whatever it is that you're doing. But another thing that, since the advent of the internet, which I realize probably everybody watching this doesn't remember before the internet, but I do.
I do too.
Uh,
So
the other thing to think about when you're thinking about a startup versus buying a franchise is, where are you going to rank in the search engines? So think
yeah,
about it. Let's say that you decide that you are in the plumbing field, right? And so you're going to become your own plumber. Now, you could do that as a startup, or you could buy a franchise brand of plumbing, right? But you think about it. Let's say your name's Joe and you start Joe's Plumbing. How long is it going to take Joe's Plumbing to get on page one, let alone in the top three on Google, right? Because if you look at a franchise plumbing company, because they have so many locations, because they're updating their website so frequently, they're always going to rise above Joe's Plumbing. So not only are you going to have that startup phase that's difficult, but then even once you start, just getting known in your community is you're at a deficit when you start your own.
Exactly, and it's not impossible to say,
No,
well, it's
not
not
at
not
all.
to ruin anyone's dreams out there and be like, "Oh, no, I'll never be able to do this," but it's a whole lot more difficult, and I know I've started this in the past and quickly realized that when you're going up against, if you're just say an e-commerce company, which is what I did, and you're going up against companies like Amazon and things like that, I don't care who you are, they have a bigger marketing budget than you do, and they're gonna outrank you 9 times out of 10, probably 9.9 times out of 10, just because they're able to put more resources behind where it is that they're selling and the marketing of it and the search engine optimization and all that kind of stuff. It's just really difficult to compete against bigger companies like that. So
Yeah,
franchises are a great idea. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what I have found is if you have a product, if you've invented a product, then definitely you're better off starting your own company. If
Yes.
you're offering a service, then you're better off with a franchise. And those are very broad statements, but generally speaking. So a friend of mine who actually she and her brother were both in the army, so they're vets. She started a business called Busy Baby Mats. And I won't go into all the details, but it took her 6 years before she really took off. And I think and she used to grind. She would go to local fairs and everything, just trying to sell onesies, twosies, and get the word out. She got on Shark Tank.
Yeah. I was going to say, I seem to remember the name of that because
Okay.
of
Yep.
watching Shark Tank.
She
Yeah.
did not accept the offer, but it was enough exposure. And now she's doing millions.
Right.
But that was a product that she created and invented. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, not all the time that just because you've created a product doesn't mean that a franchise, existing business that's out there might be a good place to get that product launched. My wife and I have been watching some of these shows on like the History Channel kind of shows, and they talk about some of like the original franchises like earlier on in this country as far as like the fast food industry and things like that, and how some of them got some of their best ideas from the individual franchise, individual location
Right.
owners. Companies like McDonald's, the breakfast sandwich that they had, the Egg McMuffin, that came from one of the individual franchise owners, right? And so if that's your idea, like you can make a significant amount of money by getting into the franchise and like we all know what that is now, right? So
Right.
so that
Exactly.
there is another option there too where franchises can come in. So
Yep. Well, and
I want to get
the third
oh, go
option,
ahead.
but that's we're just gonna put it on the table and then walk away from it,
Sure.
is starting your own business and then making that a franchise. So you are the
Hmm.
franchisor. But
Sure.
that it's kind of like buying a house, right? You don't buy the mansion first. You buy the starter house and then you get some equity in it and then you flip it. So
Yep.
whether you're starting your own business or you're buying a franchise, it's kind of a mindset. A lot of people are like, oh, I want a McDonald's and I need $2 million. I don't have $2 million, so I'll go get a job. Right. It's like,
Right.
no, if that's your ultimate goal, start with a $20,000 franchise, build it up, flip it, and then you've got more money to invest in the next level, build it up, flip it, and then invest in the next level. But you might discover that you really like your little franchise. And then here's your next thought to think about. Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? Right? If you're clawing your way to own one McDonald's location when there are people who own chains, hundreds of them, or you could be the guy that owns or gal that owns hundreds of a different franchise location and only pay 10,000 for each one or 20,000 for each one.
Right.
And then you become like their number one franchisee. So it really depends on what it is that you want in life. And I think a lot of people, I did this, a lot of people have an experience and they're like, oh, I want to do that. So they reach out to that franchisor and say, I'm interested in buying your company. I'm interested in buying a franchise location with you. And so when I work with people, I like to flip that around because there are 4,000 franchise offerings right now in the United States. And half of them have never been heard of by most people, right?
Right.
So when I work with people, there's 4 things that I like to do. You can do it on your own as well, but you need to take a risk assessment because you want to know whether you have a high enough risk tolerance to look at a startup franchise, or if your risk tolerance is less, then you probably want to look at a more established franchise, right? So
Sure.
risk tolerance is one, core competencies. Again, what did you learn? What skills did you pick up in the military or pre-military, right? If you, again, if you learned how to be a plumber, HVAC, electrician, welder, all of those trades, they all have franchises. You can start out, maybe you're like, well, I don't want to do it myself, but that's how you start. You start with
Right.
a franchise, one truck, you're the guy that's out doing everything until you're making enough money that you can hire somebody to be the one going out in the truck. And then you're just building your business bigger and bigger, right?
Sure.
So it's like, what are your core competencies? Then the third one is, what are your motivators? And I don't mean I'm motivated by money. I mean, if you think of your ideal workday, what does it look like? Are you indoors? Are you outdoors? Are you working by yourself? Are you working with people? Are you working more with people or interacting more with the computer? Is it a work from home? Is it a brick and mortar? So truly visualizing what your ideal day looks like. And then the last one is putting together your personal financial statement. Because when it comes to buying a franchise, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, well, I don't want to put any money in. And because they're hearing or they're reading all this stuff on the internet on how you can start a business with no money. I don't think you can, but we'll just leave that on
Right.
the table.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen those things too, and I question how authentic and accurate some of these things are because they are. I don't know anyone out there who's willing to put up all the money for someone else to do the work, and so like I'm going to take all the risk and you get all the benefit. Like that doesn't really seem like it's going to
right.
make a whole
Well,
lot of sense to me. You know?
and plus, if you have no skin in the game, it's so much easier to walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
So think about having at least 30% of whatever the total amount is that you need to invest. Because typically, if you're working with lenders, if you put 30% in, then they're ready to talk to you. Now,
Okay.
that's not to say you don't need some collateral to support the other 70, but two benefits that your audience has. One is vets. And if in fact you look at buying a franchise, so the SBA has money set aside, Small Business Administration has money specifically set aside for vets. And they also have money specifically set aside for franchises.
Okay.
So looking for that 30%, whether it's, and there's lots of ways to finance a business. If you have a retirement plan, then you can roll over some of those funds into your own business without having to pay tax for withdrawing it and then putting it back in. Because if you think about it, all you're doing is transferring it from an investment in this money market fund to an investment in yourself, if you think of it that way.
That's a good way of thinking about it too. Yeah, it's still an investment. It's not in the stock market, but it's in well, I
Right.
mean, which essentially the stock market is a collection of a bunch of businesses that you're investing in. And so why not just invest it into your own business and, do that instead and make a whole bunch of money while you're at it. To me, it just seems
Exactly.
like that makes a whole lot more sense. And instead of having other people make money and you just, collect on whatever the stock does or
Right.
the funds that you're invested in, make your money based on the amount of work that you're willing to put into this business, right? Which knowing a lot of the people that I know from the military, the work ethic is there. Like
Absolutely,
you're gonna
100%. Yeah.
succeed if
Yeah.
you put in the time and effort. And one of the nice things that we were talking about earlier is that when you get into a franchise, the playbook is already written. There's standard operating procedures for everything. Like if you walk into
Everything.
a McDonald's in Phoenix versus a McDonald's in New York or Chicago or anywhere else across the country, you're gonna get the same. You know what a Big Mac tastes like, and it doesn't matter where you're from. You know what that Big Mac tastes like.
And you know what the table looks like that you're gonna sit at to eat it.
Exactly. All of
Yep.
that, all those decisions are made already. It's done. You don't have to think about it. You know, the drive-through experience, the counters, the lighting, like everything is already there, right?
They all have 2 windows, one of which is always closed.
Yes, they are. And I don't get that. I've never understood. But yeah, so like we can follow orders. Like
Very
that's a
well.
no-brainer. Like we can do that really well. We've done that throughout the military. Now, if you're getting out of the military and you're saying to yourself, I'm done following orders, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, well then maybe this isn't the best thing for you.
This
But
is
if you're
yeah.
looking to get into a business, to start up your own business and you want a playbook for success, follow the playbook that's already been written. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with all of this. And so I think it's a perfect fit, and it's why I was excited to have you come on the show and talk about this because, you know, franchising for veterans, I think, is just really a super great fit.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple things like you were talking about the person who gets out and they want their own business. They don't want to follow someone else's playbook, right? So there's a couple of things. And again, this is why it's so important to know yourself before you go trying to figure out which franchise you're interested in, because there are franchises that have more flexibility than others, right?
Okay.
McDonald's has zero flexibility. Okay. I owned a school of rock music school, so we had flexibility in terms of, do you want red furniture or black furniture? If it's within this style, you can have whatever kind you want. So if you need couches to fill a student lounge versus chairs to fill a student lounge, and then we had choices of graphics that we could use throughout the school. So there are some franchises that have more creative flexibility than others. So if that
Uh,
is important to you, then that's something you want to look at. But you are correct. If you're just like, nope, I want to reinvent the wheel my way, then you absolutely will be miserable owning a franchise.
Right. So yeah, I think that's part of that, your motivators, right? That we're
Huh?
talking about, those 4 things. Like if you're focused on doing things your way, like I know this is the way I want to run things, and it's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's just not going to work. So yeah, you definitely have to look at what your own personal motivating factors going to be.
Yeah. And I like to
So
say there's 4 reasons people want to start their own business. And
okay,
typically there's one driver but all of them come into play. So it's money. Obviously, I want to make money or more money or as much money as I can, but it's around money. The other one is around fulfillment. And that was my driver. It's like, I want to know if I can do this. I want to prove to myself that I can own my own business. So that was fulfillment. Another is freedom. So again, you come and go as you please. You make the rules. Like, I mean, even when you own a franchise, like some of them, again, McDonald's, they're going to tell you what hours you have to be open,
yeah,
right? A plumbing, an HVAC, handyman, home services, even my school of rock, I got to decide what hours I was open. So when I first started, I was only open 2 nights a week because that's all the students I had, right? So when you think about that flexibility and freedom, which is the fourth one, those kind of sometimes go hand in hand. But if you want the freedom to take a 3-week vacation, a 30-day, remember in the military, you got 30 days leave, and then you look at civilian jobs and you're going to get 2 weeks at best for 5 years, right?
right.
People say you can't own a business and go on vacation. And I would say, don't plan on going on vacation your first year. But I went on vacation when I owned my business because I had a great team in place.
Right.
Did I call in every day? Of course I did. But
Well, and there's another aspect to it too. If you love what you do, I've heard this said before. If you love what you do, it's like you'll never have to work a day in your life. And so
Exactly.
if you
Yeah.
really enjoy the work that you're doing and the business that you're running, calling in from vacation, wherever you're on the beach somewhere and you're calling in, just
Mhm.
checking in
Yeah.
to see how things are going, like that is also a source of enjoyment for you because you enjoy that type of work. So,
I was gonna say,
um,
it's peace of mind. It's like I can go enjoy my day surfing
right.
or scuba diving or whatever because I know everything's handled there.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so you know everything is good. You know the team that you have in place is going to be able to handle everything and you're good to go there, right? So when we talk about franchising and specifically with retiring military
Mhm.
service members, when we're talking about these people getting into a franchise, what characteristics would you say would make somebody a successful franchise owner? Like if someone's sitting there right now thinking to themselves like this actually sounds pretty good. Maybe this would be good for me. What type of person would be a successful franchise owner?
It's interesting you asked that question because any franchisor would tell you someone who's been in the military. Like, they love the military so much that almost every franchise has a discount if you're a vet.
Oh,
Because
wow, okay.
they understand. I actually wrote an ebook. You can get it off of my website, staceymarmolejo.com. But I actually wrote an ebook on why vets are such a perfect fit for franchise ownership. But a little history, because a lot of people don't realize this. Franchising goes back to Benjamin Franklin. I mean, he was actually the first franchisor, right? But it was kind of an unregulated, sloppy, quasi cottage industry for many years. But what happened is at the end of World War II, when everyone came back, there were no jobs. And so many of the vets bought franchises and then hired the other vets. And that's what elevated, escalated, whatever. That's what made franchising take off was military. So much so, and it became a tradition, so much so that 1 in 7 franchise locations now is owned by a vet.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
interesting. And it
it's
makes sense too with the discounts that are available that you were talking about, that a lot of franchise organizations have a discount for military, and that just kinda lowers the barrier to entry to get in. So,
exactly.
why not go that route? And like you were saying too, you don't start off with 100 locations when you're starting
Right,
off this way, right? You start off with
right,
one location and then you build up your portfolio of locations, whether you keep that same location and then invest some of that profits into another location or sell that one and invest into something else. You build that up over time and you may have this other idea in the back of your head. Doesn't mean that you can't eventually do that idea sometime down the line, but this is a great
exactly.
way in the meantime to make some money and be able to have the money to invest into that idea later on, and business experience as well, because
I was just gonna say
it's
the
a lot
other
of
thing
work.
is it teaches you how
Yeah,
to own a business. So when you buy a franchise, you're actually entering into a contract with the franchisor, and there's a time on it. So some franchisors have 5-year contracts, some have 10-year, and then the bigger ones like the Hiltons, McDonald's, hotels, restaurants, they're mainly 20 years. But if you think about it, there's a couple of options when you're looking at, do I want a 5-year or do I want a 10-year? There's pros and cons to each one. But one of the of a 5-year is, I mean, you did a hitch for 4 or 6. You can look back and say how, was that a blink of an eye or was that like the experience? And if you
yeah,
think about it that way, it's like, okay, can I do another hitch for 5? Right?
right,
If you don't wanna keep it, you don't have to keep it at the 5-year mark. You're better off if you flip it instead of just walking away,
sure,
because if you just walk away, essentially, you've just bought yourself a 5-year job, right?
yeah, yeah. You guaranteed yourself a 5-year job, and more
Exactly,
or
but if
less.
if you flip it, and I will also say that research shows when you sell a franchise business, it sells for 20% more than the same business as an independent.
Okay,
So, for example, let's say you have a jewelry store, right? And it's Stacy's Jewelry. If I owned a franchise jewelry store and decided they were both doing the exact same revenue, exact same business volume, blah, 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 right? I could sell a franchise location for a 20% premium than what I could sell an independent for.
Wh- which is pretty awesome
Pretty
because
nice premium, huh?
you're also selling not only the location and the client base that you have and of that, also selling that brand name as well that goes along with it. Because
Ex-
who knows about what Stacy's jewelry store is versus some other major jewelry location, like a K or something like that.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah,
that name. There's television commercials already out there for it, and so why wouldn't someone want to pay more to get into that? Because so much of that stuff is already done for them, the marketing and all that kind of stuff. It just makes sense that you would want to get into something that a lot of that expensive stuff is being taken care of for you, right?
exactly. Well, and that's another way to think about it as a buyer as well. Is like, okay, if you decide you want to own a franchise, do you want to own one that you're going to start up? Or do you want to buy a franchise that someone like myself has built up and is now selling to retire or move on to something else, right?
Right.
Just because somebody's selling their franchise does not mean it's a bad franchise.
Right. Exactly. No, it may actually be a great franchise, and you may know, like, there's bigger and better things for me right now. Let me move on to this next thing, but I can't do
Mhm.
that while I have this other franchise, right? So let me sell this. I know the business is doing really well. I can make a decent amount of money off of this if I sell it now. And so now you turn it over to somebody else who can take it from there and really hit the ground running with a business that's already in an established location, already has customers coming in on a daily basis, and just is really easy to just get started with that.
Yeah. You will
Now,
pay more for that, but you're paying because there's already revenue there, you know?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna say it's guaranteed because there's nothing guaranteed in any
No, you
business,
can
but
if you can screw it up, you can
I
lose
mean
it.
and anyone can
Yeah,
screw something up pretty
right.
royally, but there's also external factors too. Look at the last
Sure.
couple of years with the way things were locked down, and if you just started a business at the beginning of 2020, I'm pretty sure it didn't survive very well if it relied on foot traffic.
So that's another great example of a benefit of a franchise that I hadn't thought of till you just said that.
Okay,
So we were in-person music lessons,
sure.
and a kid would go in a 5 by 7 room with the teacher, right? And like play guitar or keys or whatever, right? Well, obviously, when COVID hit, people have to be 6 feet apart, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't, we couldn't do in person lessons. I'm not a technologist. If I had just had Stacy's music, I would have been out of business.
Okay,
But
yep.
because I was part of School of Rock, we had that whole parent company figuring out how to implement lessons online. And within 2 weeks, they had a complete system in place.
Amazing, yeah, and trying to
And
figure that out on your own, good luck. I
and the
mean, maybe
cost
you
to do it, right?
right, yeah, hiring the IT people to figure this out, get the system in place, the scheduling, the infrastructure, the computers and the servers and everything else that is needed. Yeah, you probably could have figured something out using like Zoom, like we're recording on right now. You could have probably figured something out like that, but it wouldn't have been as clean and polished of a solution as probably what you had, probably branded
Right.
and marketing
Well,
towards.
the other challenge to that too, and we're getting kind of down a rabbit hole, but the other
Sure.
challenge is on Zoom, you can have a conversation. You actually cannot have people playing music together, which I learned as an owner because there's a
Okay.
delay. And even if it's
Ah,
only a 1 second delay, imagine if the guitar is 1 second off the drums, which is 1 second off the keys, which is 1 second off the vocals. By then, you're 5 seconds apart on these two different, and it just sounds like noise. So they had to
right.
create a whole platform.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that as far as the delay, but yeah, you're
There's
right.
there's yeah, there's terminology for it, and your readers or your listeners are probably, like, screaming at me, telling me the words, but I can't think of what it's called.
No, that's
Synchronicity,
okay.
there you go.
There you go.
Synchronicity and asynchronous, that's it.
Okay, yeah, so
So,
that
yeah.
is
So you
another
have that
benefit.
whole team that's gonna take care of those, like, world-altering challenges because 'cause they're not doing it just for you, they're doing it for the whole network.
Right, and if that whole network fell apart, then they fall apart, and so they
Exactly.
have a vested interest to make sure that whole network of all the individual locations are able to stay afloat. because otherwise they're out of luck too. And that's
Exactly.
obviously
Yeah.
not what they want, right?
Yeah. And then there
Now,
are also some that do exceptionally well or are unaffected in recessions. And again, I keep going back to the trades, but you think about that. If your plumbing, if your pipe bursts in your house, you're not going to go, well, I'm in a recession. I don't really have any money. So I'll just go ahead and let the pipe flood the house. You're not going to do that. You're still going to call a plumber,
yeah,
right? So, and then the recessions usually don't impact exceptionally wealthy people. So luxury brands do well in a recession because they're unaffected.
that's true. Yeah, they still have the money available to spend on those nice to have, the luxury type things, where other people may not, but they wouldn't be purchasing these high end luxury items anyways or services. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So there are some businesses that are unaffected, even though everyone talks about the recession. There are some businesses that are wholly unaffected by it. I've got a couple of weird, I call them weird ones, but franchises, they're crime scene cleanup.
that might actually increase during a downturn in
Maybe
the economy.
it's a
Um,
job that I would be comfortable doing, but somebody's got to do it, right?
right. Yeah, and you don't think about these things. And that
Mhm.
brings me to the question I wanted to ask you is you mentioned that there's thousands of different type companies that are out there
Thousand franchises. Yeah.
that are offering franchise opportunities. Common ones we all know about things like the fast food restaurants, and you
Right.
mentioned things like some of the services like plumbing and electrician and things like that. What are some of the other ones that maybe are a little bit more obscure that maybe people aren't quite as familiar with and wouldn't necessarily think of, didn't come top of mind? And the reason why I'm asking this is because again, there's probably a listener out there who's like, this sounds great. I'd love to do fill in the blank, whatever the thing is.
Right.
But who knows if there's really a franchise out there that does
That
this type of
does.
work. So what are some of the things that are out there that maybe people don't think of right off the top
Very
of their head when they
obscure.
think of franchises? Yeah.
We have Ellie Mental Health,
Okay.
which is counseling services. So even if you're not a counselor, though, you would hire professional counselors to work for you in the mental health. We have Pooper Scooper, lots of Pooper Scooper franchises. You laugh. There's a Pooper Scooper So franchising is regulated by the government, right? And they have a document which is called a franchise disclosure document, FDD. And once you get into like discussions with the franchisor, they'll give you one. But if you can get your hands on one ahead of time, it's even better. But all of the FDDs are structured the same. So once you know how to read one, you can read them all.
Okay.
Now, there's every one of those 23 points are called an item. So there's an item 19, and the item 19 is the only item that is optional, whether the franchisor wants to fill it in or not. And item 19 is what does the average franchisee make in this business,
Okay.
right? So if they're not willing to share their item 19, that's always a red flag for me. Because if your franchisees are doing well, why wouldn't you tell people?
Sure.
Right. So anyway, so I went to this one Pooper Scooper franchise disclosure document. I went to their item 19. Their average profitability is six figures.
Wow. That's a
Think
lot of
about
crap.
that. That's a lot of crap. And I'm guessing it's probably in wealthy neighborhoods,
Uh-huh.
right?
Sure.
So yeah. And if you don't want to pick up dog poop, hire some teenagers. Remember the old days where teenagers cut grass and they
Oh,
had
yeah.
their own business? Now
Oh, yeah.
it's landscaping companies that are coming around to cut grass, which by the way is also another franchise is landscaping.
Yeah.
But there's landscaping, there's blinds, there's home decor, there's pie shops, bakeries, child enrichment, whether it's music lessons, swim lessons, STEM centers, science, technology. What's the E? Engineer,
Engineering and
engineering
math.
and math. Yep. There's sports. Soccer shots is one if you want to teach kids how to play soccer. There's the paint thing where you paint and drink wine together. Gosh, I'm just trying to think. There's advertising. There's business to business. There's corporate cleaning. There's house cleaning. I said landscaping, painting, house painting, everything. If you can think of it, I would be amazed if there wasn't a franchise for it.
And if there isn't, that if there you go, there's an
There
opportunity
you
that
go. There's an
there could be,
opportunity.
right?
Yeah.
So, no,
Yep.
I mean,
And by the
that's
way,
great.
there are people out there who only want to invest in franchise opportunities.
Right. Yeah, and it's great that there are so many opportunities out there, different industries, different brands that are out there that you can get
Travel
into.
agent, sorry,
Yeah, no,
accountants,
yeah,
bookkeepers, it just keeps sorry to interrupt you, but here's another thing to keep in mind. So it used to be all franchises had geographic territories, right? So that was really problematic if like you had a military spouse because they couldn't move the geography when they got transferred. But now there are some franchises that don't have geographic restrictions. So you could actually be doing like, let's say bookkeeping, right? You could do bookkeeping on a part-time basis as a military spouse and you could do work from home and it wouldn't matter where you were stationed or where your spouse was stationed.
that was actually gonna be my next question is, are there any franchise opportunities that are work from home type things where you
Tons
don't need
of
a
them.
brick and mortar location?
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
what are some of those? Like, obviously, bookkeeping you mentioned, what are some of
They're
those
mainly
as well?
services, bookkeeping on the B2B realm. One of them is stenographer, court reporting. So if you because a lot of it's done over Zoom now. It used to all be
Okay.
done in because there yes, you have it in the courtroom, but you also have depositions in attorneys' offices,
Uh-huh.
right? So a
Yeah.
lot of those are actually done via Zoom.
Wow.
So you could do court reporting and I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
Which is actually another good thing because I know there are some veterans out there who they don't wanna interface with the public all the time. They don't wanna be the guy standing behind the counter.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah. I'm an
and
introvert. I mean, I'm happy to talk to somebody one on one, but if you wanna
right,
put me in a crowd with a bunch of people, I'm just like so I totally get it.
and that happens all the time, and I'm the
Mhm.
same way. Like, I know it's kinda weird to say that, like, I host a podcast and talk to people all the time, but it's one-on-one
But
the
it's
way
one
we're
to
having this
one.
conversation. Exactly,
Yeah, right.
it's
Yeah.
different than putting me out in public in a unfamiliar location with, you know, customer service type things and whatever. It's like I may not want to deal with that. So I may want to just stay at home. And yeah, I may have to deal with some customer service related things, but it's going to be kind of that one off thing as opposed to someone coming in the
Exactly.
door to return an item, something's broken. I got to talk to them about all this kind of stuff, whatever. So, so that's another option. So honestly, I feel like as long as you're not dead set against working for somebody else, or that's not even the right way to put it, but working under somebody else's rules and conditions, it seems like there is an opportunity out there for just about anybody who
Oh,
wants to get
huge.
into franchising, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And I know that different franchises have different oppressions. Is that a word? I don't know. Some are more strict than others about they have these rules and you must follow every single one of them. Some of them aren't quite that tight. So that's again one of those things you're going to want to look at. They are going to expect to receive your financial statements. Some are once a month, some are once a quarter, some are once a year. You were just another one that just came to mind is business coaching. You know, there are franchises that you do one-to-one business coaching, but there are also franchises where you like get people from each industry in your community and they come together to create a mastermind. And so you're with them once a month and you have a keynote speaker who comes in and talks about things in business. And then you do roundtables where each other's helping each other out with their business, that kind of thing. Right. So there are
Right.
some of those as well. How did I go off on that tangent?
Oh, it's
Right.
great because
It
there's
just
so
came in my
many
mind.
options. And I think we probably could have this conversation all day talking about the different options that are out there. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was for the people who might still be in the military,
Mhm.
they know their retirement separation date is approaching. When should they start planning for looking into like what the next steps are for getting
That's
into a franchise? What would be a good time frame? Like
Yeah,
how long
that's a
is that
great
turnaround?
question. Yeah, that's a great question. I like to say you should be thinking 12 to 18 months out,
Okay.
not so much to buy a franchise, just 12 to 18 months out to say, what am I going to do when I separate?
Okay.
Once, if you get to the point where you're like, I know I want to franchise, then again, if you're working at it on a regular but slower pace, you're not going to be as stressed out as if you like, oh my God, I'm 6 weeks from separation and now I got to figure this out, right?
Right.
I know one guy who was in the Navy in San Diego, originally from North Carolina. He wanted to go home. So even before he separated, he bought the franchise in North Carolina. He found the space. It was a brick and mortar, but he found the space and everything. He negotiated with the franchisor that he would open after he separated. So they picked
Okay.
a specific date after separation, right? Now, some franchisors are going to say, I'm not going to hold a territory that long. So it just, again, it depends on the franchisor. How long it will take from deciding that you want X franchise to opening it, again, is going to depend on brick and mortar, work from home, because the brick and mortar is always going to take longer, A, to find the property and B, to build it.
Right. Right. Yeah, because you may be building it from scratch, or you may be converting an existing
Retrofitting or,
location.
yep,
Exactly. So there's a
yep.
lot of work that goes into
There's,
that on the brick and mortar side.
right.
So I guess the answer to that is probably the sooner the better. Get thinking about that and start looking at the locations, but
Well,
also
even if,
realizing
yeah. So
not too
even if you're
soon.
like, if you know you want to own your own business and you think a franchise might be an option, learn what you can about franchising, make the decision. And if it's not a franchise, then you cross it off the list and move on, right? I mean, you're getting out of the military, the world's your oyster. You can start a business, you can buy a franchise. If you're retired, if you're done your 20, you can see if you like retirement. You can get a little part time job. I mean, or you can go to work for corporate America.
Yeah, a lot of
Not what I
options out there.
recommend, but
No, but you know what? It takes a certain type of person to do this type of stuff, and, if you feel like you're that type of person that would work well in this type of environment, working in a franchise situation, then, there's a ton of options.
I think it's the best of both worlds. I've done both. I think it's the best of both worlds,
Is there any,
corporate
like,
and
one location where people can go to find franchise opportunities that are available? Like, I know, like, geographic regions, certain places, okay, we're booked up in this region, so we're only offering it in a certain region. Where can people go to find the franchise opportunities that are available?
so there are probably 10 or 11 websites that list franchises. The challenge is the franchisor has to pay to be on there. So there really isn't one place where you can find it all. There are people called franchise consultants. And if you think about it, like when you go to a financial planner, which by the way is another franchise, taxes are another franchise. Anyway, if you go to a financial planner, there's usually two models. One is you pay the person for information and they provide it to you. They educate you, right? And then you go to the Charles Schwab or website or whatever and buy whatever stocks or that you want to buy. You invest however you want. Then there's the model that you go to the financial advisor and they give you free advice, but when you trade through them or you buy through them, then they get paid a commission,
Right.
right? Same thing. I'm a franchise coach. I don't care if you buy or you don't buy. My goal is to provide you with all the information you need to make the right decision for you. Like taking a college course. I'm going to tell you what you don't even know you need to know, right?
Right.
Then you have the franchise consultants. They are paid by the franchisors. So they have signed agreements with specific groups of franchisors to represent them. So they guide you through the process of buying, they introduce you to the franchisor, they get you ready to meet with the franchisor with like financial documents and things like that, right? Tell you what you need. And then if you buy that franchise, then the franchisor pays them a commission. So they don't mind answering questions for people, but they don't want to spend a lot of time educating you because that's time taken away from working with clients that they're going to get paid for, right?
Sure.
So a lot of franchise consult not a lot, several franchise consultants will send people to me to educate them first, and then they'll go back to the franchise consultant if they want assistance through the buying process.
Got it. Okay. So there are options out there. There's a bunch of websites out there. You could probably go take
If
a look
you
and,
yeah,
and
just
poke
look up
around. Yeah.
franchise directory and you'll get probably a dozen of them. Yep,
Right. But I think ultimately, probably a better route would be to talk to someone like yourself who can coach you through the whole process, educate the individuals on what it is that they need to know about all
right.
this, and then work with a consultant who can help you get in the door
Actually
and
buy the one you want. Yeah.
get the
Yep.
one that you want in the location that
Right.
you want to work in. And, if you're getting out of the military and you want to move back home, or you want to stay where you were, or try
Right.
someplace new altogether, those are all options that are available to you. So I think someone like that would be able to help you, especially if you're going into a territory that you're maybe a little bit unfamiliar with, and help you
Right.
find the right location there. So
Yeah.
a lot
Like
of great information.
a couple of the franchise consultants that I work with are also vets. And I like pairing vets with vets because it's a mindset that you've lived, you understand, you know? Because
Yes.
I read some statistics that said one of the top 5 biggest challenges for people getting out of the military is feeling like they belong.
It
And
is.
that's one of the things that I love about franchising too, is not only do you we've talked a lot about the parent company supporting you, but all the other franchisees support you too. So, I mean, again, let's use the jewelry store example, right? If I have Stacy's jewelry and it's Valentine's Day coming up and I'm not seeing the sales that I want to see, I can't pick up the phone and call K jeweler manager down the road and say, "What are you guys doing?" to get
Right.
people in the door. They're going to laugh at me, right? But if I own a franchise, I can call the franchisee down the road and say, "What are you doing? I'm not having any success with XYZ." Right?
Yeah.
And I learned as much, if not more, from other franchisees as I did from corporate because I could figure out which franchisees were about my size in a market about like mine. What's selling for you? What's not selling? What marketing is resonating? What's not resonating? In child enrichment, the best place to go for leads is the school systems, of course, right? But not all school systems will let businesses go in and market to the kids. So how do you get in to the school systems? If you don't have kids in the school system, you may not know all of the opportunities, right?
Right. Right.
So if I call another franchisee and I say, "I'm having a difficult time getting into my school system, what did you do?" And they tell me all the things they did, it's like, "Oh, I could start implementing those things," right? So
Right.
you might be saying, "What?" So as an example, every grade school goes to pretty much every business and asks for a donation for the silent auction, right?
Right. Right.
And I'll use music schools again because that's what I was. Most music schools will give a pack of 4 free lessons, say, right? Well, as a music school, I had access to buying instruments at wholesale pricing. So I put together a kit of a beginner guitar, amp, strap, bag, but it's a kit you can buy, right? Beginner guitar kit and lessons, making it the most expensive item in the raffle, right? Not that everybody wanted to learn to play the guitar or every parent wanted to buy their kid a guitar, but it got the parents' attention. Look, this is a $500 value that this, because it's a franchise, but they think of you as locally owned independent businesses, right?
Sure.
Kind of funny because they think of McDonald's as a franchise and they think of School Rock as an independently owned business. It's kind of the same thing. Anyway, so if you're trying to get into the school system, donate something of great worth or value to the silent auction. I guarantee you, you will get the parents' attention.
Right. And now they're going to be looking at that. saying, okay, well, who donated this? And not only are, whoever wins the auction gets the item, they're going to be coming to you for the lessons. They'll do the 4 lessons or whatever it is, but they're probably going to stick with it
Stay
longer
for
if
longer,
they
right.
spent that
But
much
then
money
they're
on it.
also gonna right, and then they're gonna talk about their experience, and that's gonna make a difference. But again, and particularly in child enrichment, where you think every year they're getting older, so maybe they try guitar and they discover hockey's more important, and then they drop music lessons, right? But every year you've got a new crop of kids going into the elementary school, so every year you're putting that guitar out there, and parents are talking. They're like, "Wow, I can't believe she donated a guitar," you know?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder what she's going to donate next year, like,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So you become, and then parents would call me and they'd say, "I really appreciate you supporting my kids' school. I have a daughter that's interested in singing. Do you do singing lessons?" And it's like, "Yes, we do." Right.
yeah.
So again, there are marketing tools at the local level that you may never think of that all of your other franchisees are happy to share.
And that's a benefit of being another franchisee, because we were talking about geographic regions before. Those people who operate in their geographic region, they they don't stand to lose anything by helping you out in a different
None at all.
geographic region, right? So that you're
Right.
in 2 separate regions, your customer base is 2 separate sets of customers, and yeah, sure, every now and again, you might have somebody who moves from one area to another and, but whatever. So it doesn't hurt them at all to
Right.
help you out, and it doesn't hurt you at all to help them out, and so why wouldn't you help each other out, sharing
Exactly.
ideas, sharing and all this kind of stuff, and when
Exactly,
you
and
have that
even the ones
network
in the same
built.
town. Like, if let's say you're gonna buy advertising, let's face it, this you live 5 minutes from my music school and 45 minutes from somebody else's music school, no matter how much advertising that one 45 minutes away does, they're gonna come to mine instead of yours, right?
Right, right,
So if you're in that environment, then everybody in the same town can put their money together to buy more advertising and each of you are paying less. Because in
yeah,
reality, for that type of business, the parent's going to go to the one that's closest to their home. And if you're in,
right,
like, I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now, right? I can't buy advertising in St. Paul without spillover to Minneapolis because we're looked at as one geographic region, right? But I don't want, arguably, I don't want anybody on the Minneapolis side. So if I partner with somebody on the Minneapolis side to buy ads, then I have my investment in marketing spend, advertising spend, and we're both going to get who we would get anyway.
sure, exactly, and it just makes your dollar go so much further. It just makes everyone's business that much better by being able to collaborate that way. Whereas if it was Stacy's jewelry and Jim's jewelry on the opposite side of the border there's no way the 2 of you would come together and invest on the same type of advertising.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
just wouldn't happen, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
like,
Can I
great
throw
conversations.
one other item out there for people to think about, please?
Sure, yeah,
So when you buy a franchise, you pay royalties. And I don't know if everyone's familiar with this,
okay,
but when you buy a franchise, your first cost is a franchise fee. And it's a one-time fee that you pay to the franchisor for the rights to use their name. And it lasts as long as that agreement is. So if you remember, I said 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? So that fee lasts that long. When that time period comes up, you have to pay a renewal fee, which is generally about a third of the going rate of the franchise fee.
okay,
You also pay on a monthly basis something called royalties, and it's typically a percent of your revenue. There are some franchises that have a flat monthly fee, but generally speaking, it's a percent of your revenue. So it may be 7%. It's generally somewhere between 6 and 11%. Okay. That cannot change until you renew your franchise agreement.
okay,
So if you're starting with a startup and they say, well, we're going to have a 5% royalty because we're a startup, but then 2 years later, they raise it to 7, and 2 years later, they raise it to 9. Now you're 4 years into the agreement. Anyone buying that franchise is paying 9%, but you're still paying 5%. Thus, a benefit to a 10-year agreement, right? But a lot of people will look at a franchise and say, well, I'm not giving up 10% of my revenue. That's ridiculous. That's a lot of money. You could not hire the talent to do the jobs that the corporate people do for you for that percentage. I'm just
Right.
saying, you know, you're not going to have to hire a lead management person because corporate's going to do that. You're not going to have to hire a website designer because corporate's going to do it. You don't have to hire an IT person. You don't have to hire an ops person. There's just so much that value there. So when you're thinking about, I don't want to pay 10%, I already paid you $50,000, right? Don't look at it that way. Look at it like, wow, if I had to hire all of these people, I couldn't afford it. You
Well,
couldn't
and
get
like
it for 10% or
the example
80%
that
of
you the example you gave before with when COVID happened and they came up with this whole basically remote learning type of
right.
system, and they had that in place in 2 weeks. Good
Yeah.
luck trying to figure that out on your own
Right.
as a franchise. And so that 10% or whatever the percentage is, well worth it because you'd be out of business.
Exactly.
So 10% of
Exactly.
zero is still zero, right? And so
Exactly. Right.
uh, so you're
So it's just,
definitely better off.
yeah. And again, that's another thing that as a coach, I try and do with people is to help them think about how to think about things. Because it is a different model than either a startup or the military or working for somebody else. It's absolutely a mindset.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, again, I think we could probably talk about this all day long, but I
I
do
think we
wanna
covered the high
kinda
points.
I think we cover the high points, yeah, and I wanna kinda wrap it up here, but where can people go to get in touch with you and find out more about the Franchise Prep Academy and becoming a franchise owner if they wanna get in touch with you for your services to learn more about that?
Yep. So the best place to start is at my website, which is my name. It's Stacey, Stacey, Marmolejo, Marmolejo.com. And on there or Instagram, it's Stacy, my maiden name, Beck, Beck, and Marmolejo. So Stacy Beck Marmolejo at Instagram. And you can hit me up. You can DM me, send me a message via email on my website. There's a contact me page. And I'm happy to hop on a call with you. If you're looking for a consultant, if you already know what you need to know, but you need a franchise consultant, hit me up and tell me, and I'll introduce you to a couple vets that are franchise consultants as well. So
Great.
wherever you are on the spectrum, happy to help.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'll have links to all of those in the show notes. So everyone who is looking to get in touch with you, they can check it out there. Stacey, it's been great speaking with you today. It's been really informative and educational. Hopefully it will help some of the listeners who are out there trying to figure out what their next steps are. So thank you for everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do think a franchise is a great first business to own it and do anything for our vets. So thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.